Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Gruey and I'm here to help you today with your classwork for April the 10th or 410. So, ladies and gentlemen, today for your classwork, first you guys needed to watch that quick YouTube video on genetics and variations. You then needed to read the article, How Science and Genetics Are Reshaping the Race Debate of the 21st Century. For your classwork, you guys are going to analyze some evidence which includes images from that article. So the first thing we're going to look at today, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at that image from page 3. We're going to look at image 1B from page 3 of our article. And we're going to look at how this evidence proves or disproves Coates' argument. His argument is that race is a social construct. So if we look at that image, we see we've got those 5 circles. And in each of those 5 circles, they show us 3 different variations of the supposed races. So the races are broken up into African in the first, Asian in the second, European in the third, which is in the second row all the way to the left. After European, we have Native American in the bottom middle, and then finally Oceanian on the bottom right. If you guys look at this, you will notice that there are some similarities or some of the actual same across the board. So you've got connections between the top row on the left and the bottom row on the middle. You've got connections between the top row on the right and the bottom row on the middle. You have connections between the top row on the right and the bottom row on the right. Right? You see all these connections. And so if you see all these similarities, does it really seem like these 5 races are all that different? No, right? If you look at this image, it really helps us prove Coates' argument. This image helps prove Coates' argument that race is just a social construct because you can actually visibly see the similarities between these supposed races. When we move on to our second image that we have to analyze, it is the caption from figure 2. It is the caption from figure 2 on page 6 of our article. And that caption says, is it figure 2? It's from page 6. Am I on the correct page? I'm sorry, it's from figure 3, not figure 2. I apologize, kids. So it says, race versus ancestry. A, the classification of people into different races is typically based on observable physical features, with skin color being the most prominently used characteristic. Racial classifications also draw upon non-biological characteristics such as culture, language, history, religion, and socioeconomic status. Thus, race is a term that lacks clear definition. B, in contrast to race, ancestry emphasizes the geographical origins of one's ancestors, including parents, grandparents, and beyond. Unlike race, the concept of ancestry does not focus on the static categorization of humans into groups, but rather on the process by which a person's history unfolded. So if we look at this caption for that image, for figure 3, it really tells us that race isn't necessarily drawn on biological characteristics. It's mostly classified by these non-biological characteristics. And therefore, it's more of a social construct rather than a biological construct. It helps us prove that in biology or in science, there's no need for these distinctions between these different groups of people. So again, this caption here is helping us prove Coates' argument. Let's move on to the third. It tells us research indicates the concept of the 5 races does not, to an extent, describe the way human populations are distributed among the continents, but the lines between races are much more blurred than ancestry testing companies would have us believe. And this is from page 4 of our article. So here, again, it's helping prove Coates' argument that race is a social construct. It's reminding us that research does not support the idea of these lines between races being very distinct and hard lines. It's reminding us that these lines are quite blurred between these different groups from different geographical regions. Our fourth evidence is again from page 4. It says the observation that the vast majority of the alleles were shared over multiple regions or even throughout the entire world points to the fundamental similarity of all people around the world. So we have something in common. Most people have things in common, and those things are alleles. This quote talks about how a majority of the alleles are shared over multiple regions and even across the entire world. This is again pointing out that humans are more similar than they are different, regardless of geographic region. Our fifth quote actually spans both pages of the Google Doc that it's in, so you're going to see a line that cuts about halfway through the quote, but it's all still one quote until you get to number 6. So our fifth quote is again from page 4. It says, the 2002 Stanford study found that only 7.4% of over 4,000 alleles were specific to one geographical region. Furthermore, even when region-specific alleles did appear, they only occurred in about 1% of the people from that region, hardly enough to be any kind of trademark. The article had talked about how a trademark would be essential or necessary in really showing that races were something that were biological. But because most geographic regions don't have these trademark alleles that occur, and because most alleles are actually found to be shared across geographic regions rather than just shared within geographic regions, it's showing that Coates' argument again is correct, that race is this social construct rather than something that is biological. So let's move on to our sixth and final quote. It says, though these physical differences may appear on a superficial level to be very dramatic, they are determined by only a minute, meaning small, portion of the genome. We as a species have been estimated to share 99.9% of our DNA with each other. This is our final quote, so I want you guys to think about it. Do you think this is again proving Coates' argument that race is a social construct, or do you think this one disproves his argument? Finally, after you finish that, you guys have to answer really 3 questions. The first one, which 2 quotes from this would you use to prove that Coates is correct that race is a social construct? Underneath that question, I want you guys to just write down which numbers you would pick. You could write 1 and 2, you could write 3 and 4, you could write 5 and 6, or any combination of the numbers. Just you have to pick 2 numbers, which 2 quotes. For our next question that you guys are going to do, you have to explain why you would pick those 2 quotes. How do those 2 quotes help prove that Coates is correct? Why would you pick those 2? What makes them stronger than the others? You have options for how to answer that. Your final question is, do you agree with Coates that race is a social construct? I know it doesn't say explain, but I want to know your opinion. I want to know why you do or do not agree with the author that we have this quarter. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in his book that we're reading, Between the World and Me, he's going to spend quite a lot of time explaining why he thinks race is this social construct and how this social construct is hurting our nation. So I want to know whether or not you agree or disagree with him at this point in our book. All right, bye, beautiful people. Have fun doing the work.